Hi, this is Tony D. Welcome to Screenwriting Tips. Today, how do we write a horror movie? Okay, so what is a horror movie? Well, it's very similar to another genre. And that genre, can you guess? Yes, comedy. Horror and comedy are very close because both of them require surprise. You have to surprise your audience to get the laughs, and you have to surprise the audience to scare them. The only difference being is one scare is pleasant and haha, and the other scare is oh my god, oh no. So a lot of the same things we talked about in the comedy screenplay apply to horror. Now, comedy coming in threes, that was perfect for a three-act structure. Excuse me. Same thing with setting up a joke. Setup, reaction, punchline. But in a horror movie, you don't want to follow that close of a pattern. In fact, you don't, although you want to follow the course of the movie and the logic of the movie that you set up and you want to heighten it, you don't want to heighten it in a discernible rhythm that your audience can perceive because you want to constantly keep them on edge. You don't want them to know where the movie's going. The moment they sense that pacing, then they know where the scares are going to come from and they will anticipate. So you got to mix it up. You got to play on their expectations and surprise them. So one of my favorite horror movies is The Shining. Great movie if you haven't seen it, by Stanley Kubrick. And many spoiler alerts ahead. We're going to talk about some movies here. In The Shining, just like in a comedy movie, we want to start very normal. Very normal. You want to have a relatable situation that the audience can kind of get in on. The worlds tend to be a bit dreary because you're laying the groundwork for the horror to come. So you don't want the audience to feel light and airy or happy. You want them to kind of feel a little oppressed and dreary. You don't want to bore them. You don't want to make it too oppressive. But you want to kind of give them the thought like, yeah, life's not so great. Another thing you do, and which does in The Shining in the first act, you want to sort of lay out some of the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of the characters, right? So in the case of The Shining, the vulnerabilities are with the Torrance's relationship. Jack has had some problems in the past. Things are a little shaky, with their marriage maybe. This is kind of a fresh start. Jack had problems with drinking. He may or may not have hit Danny before. I think it's pretty clear he did, but, he's trying to get past all that. So, you've got all these, when audiences hear this stuff like, ooh, yeah, this guy, he's not perfectly, he's definitely got some problems. Another big thing that tends to happen in a horror movie is there's a lot of isolation because isolated characters are more vulnerable. If you're not isolated, you just call the cops. You can consult the internet to figure out your problems. You can call a friend, whoever you have to call. But if you're isolated, for whatever reason, kind of doesn't matter the reason, but if you're isolated, you're in trouble. And everybody can kind of relate to that. That's another relatable thing. If you're in a house by yourself and you hear noises, somebody could be breaking in, you're screwed, right? And if you let your imagination run wild, that's the kind of thing we want in a horror movie. We want that sort of uncertainty, like, oh no, if I was in that situation, that would be bad. So the Torrances in the second act are isolated in this huge hotel with supposedly nobody else, but the ghosts are there. And then the ghosts slowly start creeping in more and more. They tempt Jack, and they tempt him with his vulnerability, which is alcoholism, and they start to bring him over to the evil side. And now the dynamic shifts, because with Jack on the side of the ghosts, Mrs. Torrance and Danny are in big trouble, right? Jack's bigger and stronger. Danny is having problems. He's seeing visions. He doesn't know how to deal with it. They establish, Scatman Crothers, who's the groundskeeper, is like off on his vacation, even though he has a psychic link with Danny. He's not going to be anywhere near the Torrances to be able to help them. And, the ghosts are slowly winding up Jack, slowly driving him more and more insane and pushing him to do the unthinkable. And then finally, the third act is all about him finally snapping and doing the unthinkable. And then, things just go off the rails. The ghosts are, you have the elevator full of blood, and you have the true look of all the ghosts. You see the dead girls and the woman who's all rotten, and it gets crazy at the end. Love that movie. It's very scary. You should definitely see it. So, acts 1, 2, and 3, you have a heightening of the tension, a heightening of the character's flaws, and then, just a heightening of the entire horror of it all. I mean, what could be worse than your own father trying to attack you with an axe? That's pretty bad. In movies like Alien, or like the John Carpenter's The Thing, it's more a fear of the unknown. Aliens, we don't, with different body chemistries and powers that are just completely unknown. We have, virtually no resistance to these creatures. And in John Carpenter's The Thing, the only thing that saves us and the rest of humanity is the fact that they're trapped in Antarctica. If the creature had landed somewhere else, everybody on the implication is everybody on planet Earth would probably be dead. In the case of Aliens, it's this, again, isolation, the isolation of space. The crew of the Nostromo, they're all just a bunch of co-workers. They're not tight family members. They don't necessarily trust each other 100%. And, they've never seen this alien before. So, it's not like they've got a laundry list of, how to deal with this thing. It's totally new to that. And the biology of the alien was also new when you saw it the first time. That's one of the scariest moments of the movie is, the face hugger ends up on John Hurt, and then they get him inside, and at first you're like, what the hell is this thing doing to him? And then you don't know, then the thing drops off and he seems fine. And it's a bit of this push-pull that you would see in a horror movie. Like, something bad happens. Oh, wait, I'm fine. Oh, wait, I'm in even worse shape. And then, of course, you get, spoiler, the chest burster scene, the famous chest burster scene, which you should have seen by now. This should not be a spoiler to you. If you haven't seen Alien, stop this video immediately and go see it. Very scary movie. The Thing also. The Thing's got a little more action than scares, I would say. But some of the scenes in that are really, really freaky. The interesting thing about that movie, too, is the main character, although it's kind of an ensemble cast, really the main character is Kurt Russell, and he's a total badass. And he doesn't have any discernible weaknesses, really, other than people kind of don't like him. And he's constantly sort of out-manning, the other men. He's such a badass. He's the biggest badass in the group. But he has to sort of, bark down the other men in the pack and sort of take control. At some point in the movie, he finally takes control. But, him being a badass really isn't the problem. The problem is the conditions under which he's stuck, and all the characters are stuck in, and this incredible alien, which is just virtually indestructible. So, again, when you're writing horror, it's all about this heightening. Heightening, in the case of The Thing, it's heightening the conditions. And, the alien itself, once you establish what it is, the fact that the guys can't get out, to get away from it or can't stop it, is really the issue, And at some point in the movie, they figure out, they have to stop it. There's no choice. if they don't stop it there, it'll get away, and then Lord knows what's going to happen then, right? In movies like Halloween, the original one, I think is great. It's very creepy. Michael Myers, he just sort of comes out of nowhere and, eventually just starts killing people. But again, it's a heightening. It's the later Halloween movies and the Friday the 13th movies that, in my view, become a little cartoony because as that franchise progressed, you felt less and less, sympathy for the victims, because I think they spent less and less time developing them. When somebody dies in a movie like, The Shining, when Scatman Crothers dies in The Shining, it's a big deal because, first off, there's not a lot of people in it, but second off, Scatman's been in the whole movie, and you kind of like his character, and he's there to save the day, and he just gets killed. So that's the kind of scene that, that's a horror scene, as opposed to, say, in a movie that, it's not really a horror movie, like Venom, where Venom bites some nameless guy's head off. You don't feel anything for that. You have to really bring forth the horror, you have to lay the foundation. If you don't lay the foundation of a guy getting killed, if he's just some nameless nobody, the audience can't really identify with him as a human being because they didn't get to know him as a human being. When somebody dies, we need to know them. And the more we know them, the more we're going to feel bad about it, when the characters die at the end, this isn't a horror movie really, but Reservoir Dogs. When the characters die at the end of Reservoir Dogs, you kind of feel bad for him, especially Harvey Keitel, who throughout the movie went out of his way to help the new guy and then gets betrayed, realizes he's been betrayed, and he's betrayed all his friends, and the kid that it turns out to be again, spoiler, turns out to be a cop, and he ends up killing him and himself, basically, essentially. And let's talk about the ending of a horror movie. Now, there's the third act where everything comes to a climax, but then there's the denouement. And the denouement is the conclusion at the end of the movie. And often in a horror movie, it's very important. So, in The Thing, and huge spoiler, it's Kurt Russell and the last survivor, I forget the name of the actor. He's good. They blow up the whole place to get the thing, and it's just them, and they don't know if either one of them has been infected, and they're just going to sit there and watch the fire die down, and after that, they're probably going to die. Night of the Living Dead, great ending. It's all about surviving the zombies, and it's a morality play, and then you get this amazing ending. Again, huge spoiler, where they shoot the last survivor. Maybe they think he's a zombie. Maybe it's a racial thing. Takes place in the early 60s. We don't really know. They don't really tell you. But either way, it's shocking when it happens. When the first time you see it, it's like, whoa, I can't believe they killed this guy. Death is a big factor, And a lot of times these horrors are insurmountable. Ripley at the end of Alien manages to get away from the alien and blast it into space, but obviously there are more aliens, and there was more alien movies, so it came back again and again and again. It's not really stoppable. You don't want your audience to feel safe in a horror movie. You got to make them feel like they're on edge. They'll never be safe, That's an important takeaway from a horror movie. Nobody wants to come out of a horror movie feeling like, oh, that was fun. You want them to come out like, oh my God, what the hell? Oh, and you want them to go home and then check all the windows and doors and look under their bed, because that's the kind of movie it is. So you want everything to be very uneasy. That's why you don't want to follow any patterns, and that's why Everything's got to be a surprise, you know? And that's basically it. So, anyhow, so we've done comedy and horror. Let me know what you want to talk about next in terms of the screenplays. My name is Tony DiGerolamo. I also do comics. I do the Webcomic Factory and Frat. Check that out. Check out my Patreon. And thanks for tuning in to Screenwriting Tips today.